Before I start talking about Black Flag Resynced, this review will be heavily influenced by the original game, mainly because I see no other alternative other than making comparisons between the two games. I mean, it's a remake, so this is kinda expected. That being said, if you spot any inaccuracies in my comparisons, do be so kind and write it down in the comment section. I played the original Black Flag some 2 or 3 months ago, and you know how it goes. You forget stuff, so mistakes can happen. And now, without further ado, I present you my review of Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. Let's start with graphics first. Obviously, the game looks much better than the original. I mean, this is hardly something you didn't expect. Yes, it looks really good, but as far as I'm concerned, this is the least important element of the game as a whole. However, I do have several remarks. First one is how our boy Edward looks like, more precisely his face. I expected much more roughness in his face, but here, he sorta looks like he has an Instagram filter over him. Also, for some strange reason, he looks different in in-game cutscenes and cinematic cutscenes. Most notable example is his beard. In the in-game cutscenes, his beard looks like if someone glued a patch of sandpaper on his cheeks. In other words, facial hair looks really rough. In fact, I should say that the beards of most of the characters and NPCs look weird and unnatural. I thought I was going crazy, but upon further inspection, I noticed this discrepancy. And essentially, I would argue this is why I had issues with his face, because he did not look like this in the original game. Jokingly, I said it's mostly like Eduardo Kenway instead of Edward Kenway to my buddy, but it is not that drastic to begin with. Still, I believe it was worth mentioning because I felt like it in the moment. The second point is what I call de-tidification. For some strange reason, the feminine aspects of certain characters have been suppressed. I am primarily talking about Anne Bonny. I really cannot wrap my head around the fact that someone found her nice titties insulting or problematic. Or whatever the fuck was the reason for her downgrade. Hell, even a freaking statue got de-titified. Someone, please, for the love of God, explain to me why this was done. Here I am, eviscerating people with cutlasses and blowing them to smithereens, but God forbid there is a titty or a nipple somewhere visible. But yeah, such is the reasoning of Ubisoft. Post your thoughts about this nonsense in the comment section below. So to conclude, overall, the game looks good, but if you aren't a graphical fidelity enthusiast like yours truly, then this is pretty irrelevant element of the game. I mean, it's 2026, you already know that the game is gonna look good, so by that logic, we didn't really gain a lot, especially when it comes to gameplay elements. Next up is the story. If my memory serves me correctly, there were articles mentioning how the story is getting expanded, how we are going to have more story elements to experience, all that good stuff. And this is only partially true. Yes, it's true, some elements got expanded, but the story is, I would say, 90% the same. And to be honest, I expected that. I didn't really buy into that whole notion to a point where I would get, 10 plus hours of extra content. I would say in this situation, we are talking somewhere between 5 and 10 hours, and that's me being generous. I mean, considering they got rid of the old system, which had conditions to achieve full synchronization, I expected them to revamp certain story points, and they did that. For example, when you are meeting assassins for the first time, instead of going through assassins themselves, you are plowing through redcoats because they got a tip from Lawrence Prince how some savages or whatnot are skulking at Yucatan Peninsula and they needed to be wiped out or enslaved. Or whatever was the reason, I don't really remember. What's important here is that this is a pretty good redesign if you ask me. Now, where the stuff expands in terms of new narratives that aren't tied to the main story is with the addition of naval officers. And sadly, for me at least, this was a waste of time and resources. Yes, they do have their storylines and you do stuff for them, but essentially they are just an overinflated skill tree addition to the Jackdaw. While I can stomach Padre and Deadman, the Baldwin woman I cannot stand. I heavily dislike her. I don't like her barking orders on Jackdaw, and I don't like her persona at all. Simply put, if I could yeet her overboard, I would 100% do it without thinking. I would probably do the same with any of the crew member, but the thing is, they are not as annoying as she is. The very moment I saw her being announced as an officer, I knew this wouldn't work, and I was right. Maybe if someone makes a mod to shut her up, that would be nice. Even better, if you can cut her from the game completely and just give us the power that she gives to the Jackdaw, that would be even better. But like I said before, these officers, I don't really care about them. To me, it was just additional busy work to acquire them so I can get the skills, or rather the abilities, for the Jackdaw. And interestingly enough, you could have already acquired certain abilities back in the original game. And as an example, I can give you the ram charge, which you could acquire by defeating one of the legendary ships. So yeah, nothing really revolutionary when it comes to these skills. But for whatever reason, you need to have naval officers, so I guess we are stuck with them. Now, one thing that sort of bothered me in the story is the continuity issue that I stumbled upon at the end of the game. You see, after Edward is freed from Port Royal and he kinda does 180-degree change with his world outlook, you get this quest to defeat this British naval officer who killed Blackbeard. And I was like, okay, vengeance, justice, pirate's honor, whatever. But no, our boy Edward just turned back to his old self and starts babbling about how he will take his treasure and all that nonsense. And I'm like, did you guys forget that this mission is available after he changed his mindset? Because apparently they did. I was just in pure disbelief when I was listening what Edward was saying, and I was like, dude, we kinda changed our mindset. What's going on with this gold stuff again? And yeah, the only thing that I can say is, good job writing team, amazing fucking work. There are also these animus rifts that appear and there is some kind of a thing happening there, and I did one of them and concluded I don't really care about that, and that was it. I read somewhere that's a thing from Shadows, but I'm not gonna play that game ever, so yeah, it's gonna be a pass for me. I will probably read online what that thing is, if I find myself curious about it, but that's it really. Essentially, to put it mildly, my interest towards that part of Assassin's Creed is literally zero. So, to summarize the story aspect, not a lot has changed. Some things that were added were okay, while others were a complete failure. Didn't expect a lot in this department, so I wasn't really disappointed. Right, now let's talk about the things that you're going to do most of the time in the game, and I'm going to start with combat. Ubisoft redesigned the combat, and if I may say so myself, for the worse. You only have cutlasses as your main weapon, and that's basically it. Obviously, this is a huge downgrade. You have some variety with heavy attacks depending on the type of the cutlass, but let's not kid ourselves. It's the same thing no matter what you do. In the original, you had swords, fists, hidden blade, you could pick other weapons, the variety was really cool. With Resynced, however, all of that is gone. I don't know why they did it, but at the same time, I don't really care because, again, it's a clear downgrade. Some of you might say, but dude, you can use Hidden Blade during combat, and yeah, you can, but only as a finisher. And that is the worst thing ever, because in order for you to use it, you need to sheath your swords, stab the motherfucker with the Hidden Blade, unsheath the swords again, and you're basically done. And my god, this is actually the dumbest thing I have witnessed. It looks incredibly stupid, and it actually insults your intelligence. Imagine this. You are fighting someone and you want to finish him, and you're like, 1 second dude, let me put my main weapon away so I can stab you properly. And you other guys that I'm fighting at the moment, could you just wait a bit until I pick my swords again so we can continue the fighting? I mean seriously, who thought this was a good idea? Wouldn't it be better if you could use one sword and hidden blade combo, just like in, I don't know, Assassin's Creed 3? And then, if you wanna go swords only, you can do it, but you finish a person with the swords only. There are so many things Ubisoft could have done, and somehow they managed to choose the worst possible outcome. Another element where combat got downgraded, for me at least, are those ridiculous flashes to indicate what kind of attack is going to smack me right in the face. Previously, you just had an indicator above the head of the enemy, and that was that. Also, why do we have overemphasized parry and finishing sounds? Why was this introduced? Why do I need to get a full freaking soundtrack when I'm stabbing someone with a hidden blade? You know what I'm talking about. That annoying ding sound when you assassinate someone? Original sounds were much more organic and natural. There was absolutely no need to do this, and in my opinion, it just makes the combat more arcadey. Additionally, you cannot chain kills like before. You have to have specific items that allow you to do so. To be precise, a sword with chain counter and some charms to achieve relatively high chain kills. I mean, it's not a huge deal breaker, but again, it wasn't really necessary in the first place. Sometimes putting RPG elements in certain mechanics is not the best course of action. Sometimes less is more. But apparently at Ubisoft, they don't really understand this. As a final point, I'd like to mention how reload speed of your gun is now ridiculously fast. I get the idea behind the reload speed increase, but it feels wrong. You are essentially reloading your gun so fast as if we are talking about having an automatic weapon instead of a freaking musket. I will admit, it is fun for a while, but then it feels dumb. The whole idea is that you use them in a tactical manner. You pick your targets, you strategize a bit when to use them and how to use them. That's why you got 4 of them in the first place. But in Resynced, it pretty much feels like you have a Glock 17 and you just pew-pewing like there's no tomorrow. Speaking about combat, let's talk a bit about stealth. You can now crouch. Yay! But to what end? The game completely removes all failed conditions from stealth missions, and it pretty much makes sneaking pointless. Yes, I admit I was role-playing a bit, but when I think about it a bit more, the stealth aspect is mostly irrelevant. Take Plantation Raids for example. You can stealth your way through it, but you can never fail the raid, and you always get the max materials no matter what happens. I think this whole stealth revamp makes the game much more simplified, and dare I say, it got dumbed down to a point where you don't have to use your head that much, you just plow through things and you win. You know that meme when it says stealth is now optional? Well, that's basically the situation in Black Flag Resynced. There is no finesse, no strategy, nothing really. Same thing goes with tail missions. Before, you used to fail them if they spotted you, which makes complete sense. But now, every single guy that you're tailing has a piece of paper on it that explains everything in perfect detail. So why would you tail people anymore? It makes no sense. You just go to them, you stab them in the face, kill their entourage or, bodyguards, whatever, and you are done with it. Speaking of dumbing down, the AI is bad. Like, really bad. Once I was hiding in the bush, like you usually do. I assassinated a guy from there, and then his pal saw me. He runs towards the bush, but not in a combat mode, just something is fishy mode. So I stab him as well, and then another guy, and I basically killed 6 dudes like that because they are so goddamn dumb. I mean, if I saw someone snatching my fellow guard in a bush, unless I really hate the guy, the bare minimum would be to ask another guy to accompany me, while normal reaction would be to ring the damn bell and alert everyone, but I guess they are too polite to disturb others. Am I right or am I right? Now, not everything is bad when it comes to combat. For example, I like the idea that you have that Spartan kick thing and that sweep thing, as well as the early introduction of the rope blade. I also like they added more variety when it comes to enemies. However, the thing is, they said the enemies are smarter now and they adapt to you, but I haven't seen that to a point where I would have to think hard in order to figure out how to defeat them. However, the overall sentiment that I have when it comes to combat is mostly unfavorable. I do not think it improved upon the original game, and in fact, I think Resynced version made it worse. It's much slower, it's not as fluid as it used to be. You can cheese the game with Spartan Kick, and while you definitely could do the same in the original one, here it feels much more cheaper. So yeah, not a great combat system revamp if you ask me. What is not worse in comparison to the original is the naval combat. The Jackdaw is not as nimble as before, but that's not a huge problem. What I like about naval combat and what I desired to see was more variety with naval weapons, and that was introduced as an alternate firing mode because now, for example, you can choose between chain shot and double shot for your chase cannons. And that's pretty cool if you ask me. The only problems I have with naval combat are overtuned legendary ships, swivel guns, and late unlocks for the mortars from the Deadman person thing, man. For starters, legendary ships are simply buffed up too much. I played the game on normal, and I did manage to take one legendary ship down. I think that was the one in the bottom left corner of the map, but the rest are just mental. In the original game, you could actually learn their patterns, and last time I was playing the original, I managed to defeat all of them on my first try, so there is 100% something wrong with the Resynced ones. Even that new brace mechanic isn't doing anything noticeable, and believe me, I'm using it properly. They are just too fast and they do tons of damage. Naturally, I didn't want to lose my mind. I reduced the difficulty and defeated the remaining 3 like that. I mean, I like a good challenge, but what we have at the moment is just frustration. When it comes to swivel guns, I think that the original final upgrade is much better because you just needed to hold a key and then the guy that's using the swivel guns snipes every single weak point effortlessly. In Resynced, however, you just get more damage, nothing else really, so that was a bit unexpected to see that they removed that firing mode. Finally, the late arrival of the third officer is something I did not anticipate at all, but it seems Ubisoft doesn't learn from past mistakes. Before, we had an issue with the late unlocking of the Roblade, but it seems at Ubisoft there exists a tradition where you need to unlock at least one mechanic just when you're about to finish playing the game. And that's basically what we have right now. Rope Blade 2.0. I cleaned the entire map, and when I was done with everything, the game decided to give me access to those final upgrades from the Deadman dude. This is absolutely dumb, and at this point, I don't know if I should laugh or cry. It's basically classic Ubisoft. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Also, since I'm talking about naval combat, let me mention forts. I actually like the redesigned fort assaults, and it feels like you are progressing naturally towards the conquest of the fort, and I like seeing my crew doing stuff. However, the crew is still a pretty static resource, just like in the original. It's just a number if you ask me. You lose them and you replace them effortlessly, so when one of them dies, I don't give 2 shits why it happened. They are just expendable, and I really hoped there would be a bit more depth to the crew system, but alas, it is what it is. So yeah, for the most part, naval combat is good in Resynced, and it actually improved upon the original game, but with the issues I have mentioned, it is not the best it can be. Now, let's talk about exploration in Resynced. We have ground and underwater exploration, and I think in both cases it's not that bad. The previous Animus fragments have been removed, thank fuck for that, so now it's more pleasant to roam around the world and collect stuff. That being said, when I was exploring certain landmarks, like for example the fort in Nassau, I couldn't access it immediately upon my first arrival. You see, that's the thing that I do. I go around and I clear everything in the location, but for some strange reason I couldn't do it. However, on my second arrival, that is after I finished the initial piracy introduction tutorial thing, I could actually enter the fortress. I mean, weird flex, but okay. The game now has day and night cycles, and while it makes sense to have those, exploring during night as well as fighting, particularly on the sea, sucks balls because you can't see shit. There is also a skip time option, but for some strange reason, it only works when you are on dry land. And I mean proper dry land, not a dock. Because you can't skip time while on Jackdaw, you can't skip time on a dock, no sir. You gotta find a patch of dirt, and only then you can skip time. Pretty bizarre if you ask me. One thing that is missing in Resynced is the minimap. I'm not sure how I feel about this, to be honest. On land, I'm okay, because I'm using the big map, but on the sea, I miss it, especially if I'm sailing through a narrow passage during a heavy fog. I mean, it's not a big problem, but I reckon I got used to the minimap. That's basically what it is. As far as underwater exploration is concerned, there are several changes. First, all the chests are not visible immediately when you access the wreck area. You need to sort of scan them with your senses to figure out where they are. Second, there are no eels that can attack you from the sea bushes. Yes, I know, they are not called sea bushes, but that's how I call them. Again, I don't really know what to think about this. It was kinda interesting because you were dodging the eels, but sometimes you don't really see it, you just hear it hissing and then kinda the eel does the jump scare, so I don't know. Maybe I'm a bit nostalgic about the eel people, but that's basically what it is. Third, you can avoid shark attacks, finally. Or rather, you can counter them, which is cool. And fourth, you do not regenerate health in air supply barrels. Essentially, the changes are not that problematic for me. I can basically live with them. Crafting is still in the game, which means hunting is here as well. But now the animals are not being dealt with using QuickTime events. Now you smack the living shit out of them like you would a normal NPC. And yes, the aggressive ones feel like bullet sponges, or should I say cutlass sponges. You can still unalive them with your guns, which is what I was using most of the time, or even better, you can put them to sleep with a blowpipe. So in that sense, you can sort of circumvent the whole smacking activity, but initially it was a bit of a shock and a bit dumb, if I may say so myself. While you're exploring the open world, you will notice that Edward is more monkey-like than before. What I mean by that is that he can make these huge leaps when climbing vertically, which looks quite natural if you ask me. On one hand, you can climb faster and get where you want in a more streamlined fashion, but on the other hand, it looks a bit ridiculous. I can kinda see the argument from the both sides why this is a good or a bad thing, but for me, since this is my, 5th or 6th Black Flag replay, I reckon this change is better because I can go faster through the game. That's basically how I see things with this particular change. Now, one change that I cannot wrap my head around is the removal of the map tool. In original, you would pull up the map tool, choose the relevant treasure map, and there you go, it's done. In Resynced, however, it seems they wanted to make our lives miserable because the map tool is gone and you need to soldier through several in-game menus in order to access the damn thing. And once again, Ubisoft removes what was working pretty good and changes it with something far more inferior. Also, another dumb introduction to the exploring part of the game is adding these random lines that Edward is speaking when he's doing stuff. Guys, give up. He is not Geralt of Rivia. He never did this nonsense, so this should have never been added in the first place. Stop it. Get some help. You're just making things worse. It's not helping the overall experience. Right, to conclude this review, I want to mention Kenway Fleet and the Hideout. Finally, it is properly offline, the Kenway Fleet that is, like it should have been from the very beginning. You have sectors where you send your ships and you get resources by either pirating or trading. There is an option to scout plantations, but it is completely and utterly pointless. So in that sense, do not capture frigates for your fleet. They serve no purpose whatsoever. Finally, you can use men-at-warships to clear threat levels, and that's basically that. It's a pretty neat system. It gives you some kind of a, let's say, passive income with the materials, and it's not that cumbersome. Now, Hideout has been upgraded as well, but only a bit. If my memory serves me correctly, we have 2 new NPCs, Fisherman and I believe this map guy who, like the name says, helps you assemble maps from map fragments while you are performing various activities. It is grindy as fuck, particularly because he requires a lot of resources in terms of sugar, rum, and I believe aloha. The 2 maps I managed to assemble gave me cosmetics, I think, so that leads me to believe it is mostly about the looks. Also, the Hideout has a passive income, and there is this guy that is sort of a manor steward or whatever. He is the new addition to the whole thing, and I really don't give 2 shits about him. I was pretty much indifferent about him. And that's it. That's my review, or rather my opinions about Assassin's Creed Black Flag. I think I managed to cover most of the points I wanted to make, but if I missed something, by all means, utilize the comment section. I look forward to seeing whatever you're writing down there. So, when all is said and done, do I recommend Black Flag Resynced? Well, the answer is yes and no. Yes, if you're going to get a 1-month sub on Uplay, which will cost you around $18 a month. That is an amazing price, and quite frankly, if the price was around $40, I would still recommend it. But that's as high as I would pay for this game. Also, if you do get the 1-month sub, be sure to cancel it so you don't give them more money than they deserve. If you, however, want to be a dumb cunt and you want to spend $60 on Steam and God forbid you decide to give even more money to Ubisoft by purchasing those despicable DLCs, then God have mercy on your soul, but more importantly, no. In that case, I do not recommend this game for a variety of reasons, which I already pointed out in this review, but more importantly, I do not think it is worth $60. And that's basically my explanation why I would and I wouldn't recommend this game. I mean, I did not expect miracles, and while in some cases I was positively surprised, In other cases, or rather in most of the cases, I pretty much expected dumb changes and redesigns, particularly after they showcased certain gameplay elements in that preview of theirs they showcased, 2-3 months ago. So essentially, I didn't have high expectations and I wasn't really hyped about the game, which therefore means I wasn't really disappointed to begin with. I kinda knew what I'm getting into and this is basically the outcome. And that's it. That's my review for Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. If you managed to get this far, let me know in the comments what you think about this whole situation. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And that's it from me, until the next one.